listening to The Motherhood Experience, a podcast where you are part of the conversation with moms, for moms, and by moms. Let's jump into this episode with me, your host, Val Kleppen. Welcome, everybody, to episode 9 of the Motherhood Experience podcast. You could probably tell I've got a little bit of a cold, but we powered through this episode, thankfully, with my friend Rachel, who goes back to my college days. That's how long she and I have known each other. I just want to say that this podcast and connecting with all of these wonderful women that the Lord has put in my life over the years is it's not only so much fun, it's just so rewarding, and it's so encouraging and inspiring to hear everyone's different, separate, personal, unique story and to be able to share it with the rest of the world. It gives me great pleasure to introduce you to my friend, Rachel Kemp. I'm so excited that you joined me today. Tell me, first of all, where you're from so everybody can hear your adorable accent.
So I'm from Memphis, Tennessee. Been here since I was about 18 years old.
And the history that you and I have, actually, we'll get into that in a minute. First, I want to cover the ages and stages of life that you're in. So tell me the ages of your kids and kind of the stage of motherhood that you're in.
So I have 2 girls, always meant to be a girl mom. So, that was divinely blessed at some point, but know what to do with little boys, but that's beside the point. So I have a 10-year-old daughter. Her name is Sloan, and I have an 8-year-old daughter whose name is Aniston. 2 totally different kids. And I feel like we're in that stage of life where they're both really figure out who they are. They've gotten past the baby and the toy stage and, the sweet little kids that just kind of play together all nicely. And now they fight all the time. And, they're 2 totally different kids. And so that's understandable. But they still love and support each other, which is a great thing. But I think I'm at the stage of motherhood where we are dealing with how do you navigate bullies and being okay with who you are, because my oldest, she's my theater choir kid, but she's also insanely shy at the same time, which seems like it shouldn't go together. But when she gets on the stage, she can be a different person, which is really interesting.
Yeah.
Hates sports. And then I've got my little one who is my little athlete. She is not a girly girl. I haven't been able to force a dress on this kid since she was about 6, 5 maybe. And she is my little softball star. So we run all week and weekend tournament for her, watch her play softball, and that she just loves and is just, such a fast little kid. She's tiny. But she's like what I call my baby beast. So I guess I'd say
I love it.
In the transition part of motherhood and where they really become their own person.
Mm-hmm. Oh my goodness. I love baby beast. I might steal that. So listeners are probably wondering how this northern part polar bear girl met this adorable woman with a southern accent. And I know that we attended the same university in Tennessee and really hit it off. We became college besties, but I don't remember. Was it just because we kind of were with the same people that I don't remember how we met?
I think so. And that's funny because I'm sitting here racking my brain and I don't remember how we met either. And so I think it was because, so your first roommate was in a cappella, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I think we met through her.
Yep.
Because I was in a cappella singers with her. And then you and I just you were one of the only people that I knew there that would just laugh about almost anything. And so it was just like having fun all the time.
Did have
and I was like, I know. And so then we're like, why don't we live together? And then we ruined that by getting married and leaving.
We had this whole plan, and then Brent proposed and he ruined everything.
Brent.
Yeah, I know. One story that I would love to, we have to tell it because it's so much of the friendship that you and I have had for the last, 20 plus years is I'll tell it how I remember it, and you tell me if you remember it the same. But we were in your dorm room because we weren't roommates. We had a plan to be roommates, but we weren't. So we were in your dorm room, and you were telling me about some family reunion or something, and that you had a cousin. Why do I remember these details about it? you had a cousin, and you were all playing this little game, and your cousin was like, and you can have a Hanny, and you can have a Hanny, and you can have a Hanny. And you're telling me this story, and I'm looking at you. I stopped you and I said, what's a Hanny? I thought it was like some Southern thing I didn't know about. And you stopped and you looked at me and you go, I don't know. And then we just laughed forever in that dorm room. And then from that point forward, you were not Rachel and I was not Val. We were both Hanny.
And still to this day call each other Hanny.
Yes.
And that's exactly how it happened. And I
good.
remember because I was, and it was like literally this kid was, it was like Oprah before Oprah happened. It was like, you get a Hanny and you get a Hanny. Everyone gets a Hanny. And you did. You looked at me and you said, what is a Hanny? And I was like, I have no idea what a Hanny is.
And I really had like leading up to this interview, I was like, call her Rachel, call her Rachel. Because I have called you Hanny for 20 years.
Exactly. But if you forget and call me Hanny, it's fine.
It'll probably happen. It'll probably come out. But we became very close friends. We did have a lot of fun together. You flew out to Wyoming. You were a bridesmaid in my wedding that even though Brent ruined our roommate plans, you were a bridesmaid in our wedding. You went on to get married a couple years later, and I was too broke to go to your wedding. I think, let's see, I've been married for 20 years. So I think I've been broke for like 19 and a half of those, but not really.
But I forgave you. We did. We ran off to the beach to get married, and even people who lived where I live couldn't make it to the beach. And so I totally understood.
Oh, I'm so grateful that you and I have remained friends over the years. And every time we talk, it's just like, we're back in that dorm room again, just cutting up and having a good time. So
absolutely.
I'm grateful to have you on the podcast today. I would love for you to share your journey of your professional career because that plays such an integral role in your motherhood journey. So absolutely. Kind of, you went to school to be a nurse. You went to nursing school.
Yeah.
And take us forward on the amazing path from there.
Yeah. So I think when I started college, I didn't actually know what I wanted to be when I grew up. And that's really how I ended up at Freed Hardeman where we met. And, like I said, you left the year before I did, but then I ended up leaving there as well to attend nursing school in Memphis. And I kind of decided to go to nursing school on just kind of a whim because I still didn't really know what I wanted to do when I grew up. But what I did know is I always knew that I wanted to do something where I could always support myself. Like, I think I grew up seeing my mom, and my parents have been married for 50 years as of last month, but my mom always stayed at home. And so she never worked. And I remember from growing up, my mom always worrying about what would happen if something happened to my dad. And I don't know why that struck a chord with me so much, but I always knew that I wanted some kind of career that I could always have something to take care of myself and not depend on anybody else. And so somebody said, hey, have you ever thought about nursing? You can always get a job in nursing. And if you get bored with one, you can try another because there really is so much to do in nursing. And I was like, you know what? Let's give it a try. So I enrolled in nursing school, and pretty much from the first semester, I just really fell in love with the science and, with how everything worked. I always thought it was really cool. And so I knew I'd made the right choice. And so in my last year of nursing school, I had the opportunity to work as an intern in the hospital. Started out in the ER, quickly learned that it's a great experience, but that wasn't where I was meant to be in nursing until I found the operating room.
Mm.
And then I just instantly knew that that's where I was supposed to be in nursing. I'm one of those weird people who really enjoys seeing the inside of people's bodies. That sounds really weird, but it was fascinating. Like, seeing what a brain looks like in person or holding a heart in your hand, there's just really nothing else that you can do that's that same thing. And just the marvel of how everything works together and how we live and breathe was just fascinating to me. Again, I always knew I kind of wanted to be even greater. And so after about a year into my nursing career, I decided to go back and get my dual master's degree in nursing and then also in health administration because maybe I'm a little bit of a control freak. That's very, very possible. But I, also as a nurse, like I always saw things that happened and I would have all these ideas and I didn't really feel like people listened to what the staff nurses saw and what they thought they could fix. So
Mm.
I was like, well, that can be me. I can just go fix things. And so I did get my master's degree and started to move up in leadership. I went up all the steps of what a nurse leader can grow into, starting with a position called patient care coordinator, and then was promoted to a clinical director all over surgery. And then in 2016, I became an administrative director over a hospital unit. And so at that point, I covered surgery, covered the cardiac cath lab, I covered labor and delivery and NICU and GI lab. And when my boss at the time decided to move and take another opportunity, I was asked to step up to be an interim chief nursing officer at that hospital. That was supposed to be temporary, and I just really fell in love with that executive level of leadership and became a CNO at an inpatient rehab hospital and then moved over to where I'm now vice president of patient care and an associate chief nursing officer at the only level 1 trauma center within 150 miles of Memphis, Tennessee. It is extremely challenging as a career, especially in a post-pandemic world that brings its own challenges, but also with managing that level of a career with being a mom at the same time.
For sure. And that was perfect because I want to lead right into that. So you have two girls. I remember seeing pictures of them when they were very young, when I was still on social media. Sloan had amazing hair. And also you were sewing. You had like a sewing business on the side at that time.
I did at that time. I have completely run out of time to do that. Uh, and, they don't wear what I want them to wear now anyway. So, we are in the stage of life where we can only wear Under Armour, Abercrombie and Fitch. So, mom sewing wouldn't cut it now anyway.
Yeah. And your husband is in law enforcement, which
Yeah,
adds an entirely different level of dynamic household interaction into your family. And so
absolutely.
how do you manage this demanding successful career and two beautiful girls who are in different activities, different stages of life? What does that look like for you?
Oh, it's absolutely a challenge. So my husband, for most of our marriage and most of my kids being alive, he's worked evening shift. So he's not there all the time to take kids to activities, things like that. He is on day shift now, so that's barely new. So we're adjusting to kind of how those schedules can sync up. But I have an awesome mom that I mentioned earlier who, like I said, she stayed at home through all of our childhood. Once we were all grown, she did go back and she was a legal secretary at a
Mm.
local law firm. And when I told her that I was having a baby, when I was having Sloan, she told me it's my dream to be a professional grandmother. And so she offered to retire at that point and to take care of my kids full time, which has been the only way that I could do everything that I have done professionally, because she's kept both my girls since they were born, since the day that I went back to work from maternity leave. And now that they're school age, she goes and does car line for me in the afternoon. She picks them up and then I pick them up from her house. There's been many of times, where Sloan had a ballet recital and Aniston had a softball game that, she would take one to ballet practice while I went to softball. And so I always say it takes a village to raise a kid these days, not just those of us that have parents who can be active grandparents, but, making a lot of friends whose kids do the same thing we do. And there's been times that as friends, we've run each other's kids to practice or said, hey, jump in the car with us. We're going to this practice. Your mom's taking your sister to practice. And we just help each other out and build that village of moms who are going through the same kind of struggles. Because, who can afford to be a stay-at-home mom these days? If you can, I think that's absolutely fantastic, and I'm very happy for people who want to do that and can do that, but it's really hard to do that these days.
Yeah. I'm going to take it back kind of a little bit because I really want to hear about what it was like being a nurse in these, fast-paced, high-intensity hospitals and situations and being big pregnant expecting mama. What was that like?
Ooh, so some days, and so I was in my clinical director stage of life when both my girls were born. And, I tell the nurses that report up through me now that are in that role, that's really the hardest job I ever had. There's a lot of pressure from staff nurses below you because they depend on you to be their advocate. And then there's a lot of pressure from the levels above to make sure that all the budgets are correct and that things are done in the right way. And so it was really hard and it was really stressful. And I remember working 16-hour days. And I remember one time being big, huge pregnant. I think I was like 8 months pregnant. It snowed in Memphis, which doesn't happen, and everyone loses their absolute mind. But where a lot of places shut down when it snows, hospitals don't, right? So you still have to be at work. So at 8 months pregnant with Sloan, because she was born in January, I remember being at work for 3 days because I drove to work and then I stayed until the roads cleared. And I remember my peer, so I was the director of the operating room. She was the director of the PACU, which is our recovery room. And so we're trying to find something to eat because the cafeteria workers didn't show up. And so we're trying to walk across the street of downtown Memphis with ice. I'm 8 months pregnant and she's probably 5 feet tall. And she's holding my elbow, trying to walk me across the street and not let my big pregnant butt fall in the middle of Union Avenue. And we basically ice skated across the street because I was also 8 months pregnant and very hungry. So, it's just kind of some of the adventures of being pregnant mom and working full time.
I'm amazed at that just thinking about it because, being pregnant 3 times, I was working at a bank for all 3 pregnancies. Like the most physical demanding thing I had to do was walk from my office to the copy machine, down the hallway. And I would just get winded and have sciatica and, just be like, oh, why? And here you are like, oh, I was working 16-hour days. I stayed 3 days at the hospital in a snowstorm. Like, of course you did.
None of that was fun. And my coworkers, they would show up and they would be like, so with my second child, with Aniston, all I wanted was Coke Ices from Burger King and Hush Puppies. And so I remember one of my coworkers, she showed up in my office and I don't know if maybe I had an extra batch of pregnancy hormones that day. And so she's like, I brought you some Hush Puppies. And I was like, Thank you so much. And I'm sitting here just eating a whole big batch of hush puppies in the middle of the
Have you ever cried over hush puppies since that day?
I did not cry over hush puppies, but I do remember crying one time on the way home because I stopped at Burger King and the icy machine was broke.
Of
And my
course.
husband went back out to a different Burger King because that is the beauty of living in a city like Memphis is there's like 150,000 Burger Kings. And so he did manage to find me a Coke Icy that day. So he got some major points for that one that day.
Oh my goodness, I love it. What is a nurse like as far as an OB patient? Were you like in the know of everything and telling your OB what was this or that?
Absolutely not, because to clarify, I really hated my OB rotation. I knew I was never meant to deliver babies. I really thought I wanted to be a pediatric nurse, and then I realized that I love my own kids. I don't really like other people's kids that much. Um, and really, a lot of parents sometimes get a little intense for me.
Mhm.
But, and I got really lucky because so my OBGYN, I saw her as a patient from the time I was about 18 years old. When I moved to Memphis, she was my first gynecologist, and so then we worked together in the OR. So she was, she did surgeries at the hospital that I worked at, and so we developed a friendship on top of me being her patient. And so when it came time and I got pregnant, we were already friends. We had this great relationship. I remember getting really nervous because I was like, what if she is not there when Sloane's born? Because I
Oh.
wanted her there. And so Sloane decided to come. So I got put on bed rest at 36 weeks with Sloane because my blood pressure started going up. But also, I had a lot of extra amniotic fluid with Sloane.
Mhm.
And I started to have contractions around 36 weeks, and she was breech. And I was already about 4 centimeters dilated for a week before she was born. So I was on bed rest. I went to bed when I was about to turn 37 weeks. I went to bed, and at 11:30 that night, she put her foot through the amniotic sac and broke my water. So I woke up in the middle of the night and I'm like, it's funny. So I say that we are probably the only people that I know of that have a video of the ride to the hospital because so she told me because I was already 4 centimeters, she was breech. I needed to have a C-section. And so she had told us, she said, when you go into labor, you need to get to the hospital pretty quickly. Okay. We live about 45 minutes from the hospital because we live in the suburbs. And so my husband, we pop up, it's 11:30. First off, so funny story. The things you don't know and you should know because you're a nurse. I didn't realize that when your water breaks, it keeps like it doesn't just break and it's gone, right? It just keeps it gushes here and there. So I would go jump in the shower, clean up, and then get out, and it keeps happening. And I don't the things you forget when you're a nurse, but you're also a mom. And so we get in his police car and we drive to the hospital. And so he put his lights and sirens on because we have to get there fast,
Of
right?
course.
And so anytime in a police car, if you turn your lights and sirens on, the camera starts. So I say we're the only ones um, who have a video of the ride to the hospital. And we got there in so I said we live about 45 minutes away. We got there in like 20. So
Wow.
it's a little interesting, but she happened to be on call and they called her and they said, I'm so sorry, we cannot get her on the phone. And I'm like, so then I'm freaking out because also when you work in surgery, you know who all the good doctors are and you know
Yep.
who all the doctors, I'm not going to say bad doctors, but the
Yeah.
ones that you are not as confident
Less
in.
preferable. Yeah.
Right. So my first question, I took a deep breath and I said, okay. I said, who's on call? And they said, they told me who it was, and I said, okay, that's fine. I love him. He can come deliver my baby. She was just in the shower. She called right back, but they both delivered Sloan in the middle of the night via emergency C-section. And, I told you she was breech, but her head was lodged under my ribs. And both my girls had big heads. So she was born with this big bruise on her forehead from my ribs, but my husband thought they were going to pull her head off. And he said, I was looking over the sheet, but I didn't want to tell you anything because I thought they were going to pull her head off. And so he was a lot calmer for the second one, but it's always an interesting birth story. But she also was able to deliver Aniston too. So, we still, to this day, so a year ago, I had to have a total hysterectomy because in 2019, I had a huge ovarian cyst. So it was like watermelon sized. It made me look pregnant. And I had that ovary removed back in 2019, and it had a borderline stage 1 ovarian tumor. So I've been in surveillance since then, and just went ahead and had everything removed last year. But she's still, even though I don't have any of my female organs anymore, I can still text her at any time and just say, hey, what do you think about this? But she's a wonderful doctor and a wonderful friend, and I would never question her judgment.
That's such a great story. And it brings to mind too, with you being a nurse, and especially like in trauma and ER and OR and all of this, your husband being a police officer, and you're in Memphis. Does it kind of bring like, too much almost?
I think like the interesting thing about living in Memphis is, everybody talks about, oh, Memphis, the high crime rate, and we see a lot of things, but I think the more you worry about things, the more you limit your life. And the last thing I want to do is limit experiences out of fear. Do I know that something could happen at any moment? Yeah, but it could also happen in small town. Traumas have happened to me in small towns that have never happened here. And so I think, as a mom, the best you can do is be cautious about the things you can be cautious about, and then let your kids and yourself live your life, because you can be too afraid, and you can limit yourself. And it's just, I never want to limit their life or make them feel like they have to be afraid to live life, because I really want them to experience everything life has to offer, but be safe and be cautious. And that's why we have limits that we do. But we do see a lot. We see a lot of gun violence. We see a lot of homelessness. And at my hospital, we take care of all people, regardless of their ability to pay. We may take somebody who's got all the money in the world and somebody who has nothing in life. And you can learn something from everyone. I love that we live in a place that does have such world-class health care. And so we've got, St. Jude in our backyard that, one of Aniston's best friends almost died from a childhood cancer, that they have all the things that she experienced, they've never experienced in another kid ever. And we thought she was going to die a lot during that year. But we have St. Jude in our backyard where, they were able to figure it out, and she's in total remission now. We've got the only level 1 trauma center that, if my husband was injured on the job, like, we save most of the patients that come through our door. So I think bad things can happen anywhere, but it gives me a lot of relief to know that we have the capacity to handle those kinds of things in our city. And I love being a part of an organization that does that for other people.
That's such a great story and perspective to have, especially when I think that as a mother, the nurturing nature in a mother tends to lead on the side of worry, playing out what if scenarios and all of that. So I'm glad that you shared that. And I want to touch on one more thing that you and I had talked about off camera, but I love. Tell me about your birthday party. I don't want to say solution because I know that there are people out there like my sister who love doing birthday parties, but tell me about the alternative that you and your
Yes.
husband came up with.
So, we started out, when I was a new mom, we had the big first birthday party that she remembers nothing about. The $80 smash cake that she stuck her fingers in, and we did that for a few years. But things like that really stressed me out. But it just make the worry. I think the biggest thing for me and that stressed me out all the time was, what if kids don't show up?
Mm,
To me, there's nothing that hurts my mom heart more than a kid who feels on the outside. Now, that never happened to us. A lot of kids at our school, my kids go to a small private school outside of Memphis, and everybody goes to everybody's parties. But I know exactly, how stressed I am all the time. Really, the last thing I want to do on a Saturday is go to a birthday party. And I will put myself out for my kids. And especially if it's one of their very best friends, we will always show up. But, what I introduced to my kids was, how would you feel if instead of having a birthday party, we do, a short, a long weekend trip? Mommy and daddy will take off work Monday and Friday. We can take 4 days. We can drive to Nashville. We can drive to Arkansas. We can find something we haven't done before and take a little weekend trip and have an experience together. And my kids jumped right on that because they're like, oh, okay, so maybe we can go to a water park instead of going to the children's museum for a couple of hours and have a fun time together. And my kids love to travel. So we've actually decided to expand that out even more. And so now, instead of doing like a bunch of Christmas presents and birthday presents, what we've decided to do is take a winter trip and a summer trip together. And instead of doing a couple of long weekend trips, we are going to do 2 week-long trips. And we bought this map of the United States. In this map, you can put pictures of where you visit in each state. And so now, instead of Christmas and birthday presents, we've decided we're going to do 2 trips a year, and we're going to fill up our United States map with
I
memories
love
together.
that so much.
Yeah.
I love, and what I'm hearing you say is that you're coming to South Dakota.
Yes. At some point, I'm coming to South Dakota and I'm going to visit my Hanny, and we are going to have a good time. And Brent's going to say, yeah, this is exactly like you guys were in college.
Yeah, Brent and Jeff are both going to just kind of be like, what, why? What is happening with them right now? That will be so fun. I love that idea though. And just in the episode that aired before this, I was talking with Christine about making memories, not mandates. And what a sweet way to
Absolutely.
even visualize those memories with the map and the pictures. Oh, Hanny, that's brilliant.
I know. So it hangs in our hallway, and that's what we talk about. So we dream together about what we're going to do in each state, and they think about things that experiences they would like to do. And in lieu of their birthday kind of thing, so Sloan was born in January and Aniston was born in April. So the deal is, for the winter trip, Sloan gets to pick a special experience that we'll do on the trip, and for the summer trip, Aniston gets to choose. So that kind of works in their birthday aspect into the trip. So we're going to be doing our first. So we already had a Universal Disney trip planned for after Thanksgiving. So that's going to be our Christmas trip this year. We're in the process of planning our summer trip. So who knows where we're going to show up
Yeah.
next summer.
Hey, I'm ready. And that's so fantastic. I just, as we end here, just want to encourage you in keep doing what you're doing. Your girls are so lucky to have you as their mama. You are killing it in the nurturing nurse world. And you're just one of my favorite people, clearly. And thank you for coming on here and sharing your experience and your life and your day to day with the. I'm sure that other working moms, especially, are like, Oh man, there's another one who is killing it out there and also like, but oh baby, I'm so tired.
Oh yeah. And some days I don't feel like I'm killing it. Like some days I feel like I'm barely keeping it together. Some days I feel like I'm failing on all fronts. Like I said, my kids told me they were going to buy a whiteboard for me so that I remembered all their little deadlines at school because there's a lot of them.
Yeah.
But I think we're all out here doing the best we can. And, it takes a village and it takes leaning on each other and learning from each other. And, that's what I love about your podcast is even though we all have different experiences, we all go through a lot of the same things. And I think there's a comfort in knowing that others are going through the same thing you are on a daily basis.
Amen. Love you, Fred.
I love you.
Thank you so much for joining us on today's episode of the Motherhood Experience podcast. To join our exclusive TME community, head over to themotherhoodexperience.com/learn more. Be sure to follow the Motherhood Experience on Facebook or Instagram, and please leave us a 5-star review wherever you listen to podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, leave us a comment below, and we'll catch you next time.